Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to our 5th or 6th annual homeowner seminar today. Appreciate you all braving the fog and the cold. It's probably one of the foggiest mornings we've done with this show. It was a couple years ago. I don't know if anybody was here back when it was 17 degrees. And that was a chilly day. It was a chilly day. Do we have any alum here? I know a couple people have been here before. Okay, appreciate you coming back out. Hopefully we'll make it just as good for you again. Couple housekeeping things. There's restrooms in the other building on the sales floor, and there's one also off the employee break room. If the other one's occupied, just go and ask somebody where that one is, and they can direct you to that. A couple of our staff members I'd like you to meet. Sharon, if you'd stand up, please. Sharon is permanent part-time. She does our books, pays bills, pays payroll. Everybody likes her on payday. Takes care of a lot of shopping and running around. She's our go-to person. We really appreciate her. How long have you been here, Sharon? 8 years. 8 years. Okay. Then we got Matt. Matt's one of our part-timers. He's going to BC right now. Going to go to CSUB. How long have you been here, Matt?
5 years.
5 years? Okay. You just can't get rid of him, but that's all right. And then Santiago. He's our warehouse delivery guy. You want to raise your hand, Santiago? Okay. He's our warehouse, delivery, shipping, receiving, sales floor, jack of all trades, master of everything. So we appreciate him being with us. Let's take a look at your packets. Everybody has a packet. Everybody should have a green coffee cup. That's ours to you, compliments to come out on this day. You can take that and enjoy your coffee as you look at your lawn, hopefully. Thank you. In the packet, there's several things in the packet. There is a label, green sheet of paper called 20-5-10 Spring Blend. We'll be using that in the second part, but that's a fertilizer label. You should also have several things that have this chart in the front. Then there's a handout on green Kalinga. This is a problem weed we have. There's one soil sample. We'll go over that, look at that. And there's an annual chart. Came up with this a couple years ago. People kept asking us if we had something to hand out. We would always say, what's in the newsletter? And they would say, well, I lose my newsletter. So this is a chart based on what kind of lawn you have, warm season, cool season, whether you're overseed, not overseed. But that kind of gives you an annual chart. Some people I know just tape this on their garage wall and look at it when they need to. On the other side of the packet, there are some brochures. And first one is how to calibrate your sprayer. We'll mention that in the second seminar. We have one all about pre-emergence, so you can take some of the information today, be able to take that home with you. Fertilization and watering of trees, very important in keeping our landscape trees alive to properly fertilize them. Many people ask the question, watering, when and how much to water, so there's a pamphlet on that. Pamphlet on how to set your spreader for our products. Many people will ask, I've got a broadcast, got a drop, what setting do I put it on? This gives you an approximate guide. It all depends on wear and tear on your equipment, how fast you walk, how fast you move over if it's a broadcast. But it gives you some general guidelines. And then there's one on amending the physical nature of the soils. We'll get into that in the first half of the seminar. So those are there. You can take those all with you. The other side, you've got a nutrient function page. Some people ask, well, what do the nutrients do? There's 17 nutrients that plants need. Carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen they get from the air, soil. What others they have to get from the roots. And this talks about what the different materials, what the different nutrients do for the plant itself. It's kind of like reading the side of the label on a box of cereal. You know, everything you get in this box, minimum daily requirements and all that stuff. But that's what the things do for. And then there's some scratch sheets of paper. If you do need more scratch sheets, run out, take notes, just give a holler. We'll be glad to round up some more. There's also, if I'm not mistaken, there better be, should be, somewhere in here there is a good morning. Is Matt still back there? Come on in, come on in, come on in, have a seat. There should be in these folders somewhere a little, looks like a raffle ticket. Can you find it?
Behind the business card.
Oh, behind the business card, they hid it. Okay. That's your ticket to a 10% discount at Gardner Supply. Any purchase today or later on in the week if you don't do anything today, but our appreciation to you for coming in today. Jan, if you're cold, there's another seat back there underneath the heater. You'd be good. You'd be good. Okay. So that's courtesy. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate you being here, taking the time, the effort to come out. So that's just a little way of saying thank you to come. I know Bonnie, the only reason Bonnie here is to get that ticket. That's the only reason she told me, the only reason she showed up. But.
Not true. I love you guys.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay, general things out of the way. Any questions so far? A couple more people to introduce. Back there, Justin, the guy with the green beanie on. Wave your hand, Justin. He's one of our part-timers. He's a senior at Frontier, hoping to do it at Princeton. So we'll cheer him on. Going to college, he took the shotgun approach rather than the rifle. He sent out, 17 different applications? 11? Okay, well, he toned it down a little bit, but the shotgun approach. And then David Herman is right there. He's our new assistant manager, bringing him on board. So we're glad he's here. Been a good addition to the staff. Okay, let's get started. This is dark up here, so you can see the slides better, plus the video works a little better. We are professionally taping this seminar. So if you have more questions or can't get information, if you'd like to purchase one, you can sign up today, and he'll mail them to you when you're done. But both seminars will be taped, professionally done. So hope that'll be another service for you to have. We have a lot of information today. If you feel overwhelmed, don't feel like you're the only one. People have come back and said, that's just too much. I know, but it's a short time. A lot of people come back a second time, and that's free. You can do that. We appreciate the patronage. But there is a lot of information. If you feel overwhelmed, that's fine. But if you get the video, that'll give you the DVD. That'll give you a chance to go back over it later. Okay, come on in. Welcome. Come on in. Okay, the seminar we've entitled How to Have the Best Looking Yard on the Block. Very good. We have a lot of people that come in and say, we appreciate you guys, we use your products, we have the best looking yard on the block. Several things that go into what we do and why we do it, so we're going to share some of those things with you. But basically, how to have the best looking yard on your block is the nature of our seminar today. The goal that you have, we help to equip you with, is to provide an optimum environment for the plants to express themselves genetically. If you have the right environment, soil, water, nutrients, that plant is going to grow exactly as it's designed to grow. So that's what we want to do, is equip you to do that, provide the optimum environment so those plants can grow the best good as they can. There are problems with this, though. You run into problems in trying to get that environment. One of them is called abiotic problems in landscape. Anybody have an idea what I mean by abiotic? Okay, without A means not or negative. Biotic means biological. Non-biological problems in the landscape. First part one, is non-biological problems in the landscape. Part 2, we'll deal with biological problems. That's when we'll deal with weeds, funguses, insects. But right now we're dealing with the issues that, apart from living things, cause problems in the landscape. There are 2 excellent publications by the University of California. One is called Abiotic Disorders of Landscape Plants. It deals with a lot of issues we'll be talking about today. The second one is Pests and Landscapes in Trees and Shrubs. This deals a lot with the second part of what we're dealing with today. So these are 2 excellent resources. We basically sell them at cost. They're about $50. You can get online, order them for about the same cost. But this is an excellent resource if you're really serious about what you're doing, or if you're involved in the landscape maintenance business. These are some excellent resources. Another book we suggest, if you're really serious about what you do, is called Western Fertilizer Handbook, 2nd edition. A lot of the things we talk about, nutrients, Soil amendments will come from this book here. So 2 parts. First part is non-living problems in your landscape environment. Second one is going to deal with living things that cause problems in your landscape. Okay? Part 1, part 2. Okay. First thing we deal with are water-air deficiencies. This is a slide taken from the Western Fertilizer Handbook. If you have soil particles that are packed on top of one another, you have an air space in that gap. It's called a soil pore. That soil pore should be ideally 50% water, 50% air. What happens if that balance is messed up? First slide over here. Well, you can see it, but that little air bubble is almost non-existent. What happens when you have poor drainage in a soil? You water, the water percolates down, and it doesn't go beyond maybe a layer of hardpan or some clay. And over time, that moisture builds up. And it depletes the oxygen in that soil pore. You have problems because plants, just like you and I, we need oxygen and water to live. Roots are in the soil, they get the oxygen, they can't get the oxygen. You begin to have root rot. You have root rot at the top of the plant, whether it's lawn, tree, shrub, begin to die back because roots aren't supporting the plant. In the middle is called field capacity. That's half saturation. That's a 50-50 mix of oxygen and water. That's ideal for plants. When you water, you want the water to be pulled by gravity through the root zone. Water will adhere to those soil particles through adhesion and cohesion, and you'll develop a 50-50 ratio. The water should drain past your root zone and leave the moisture in the soil. We live out south of Shafter, got 10 acres, and one year we took over a farm field. And one of the questions I asked the farmer was, how do I know when to water? Well, basically you go out in the field, you take a shovel, dig up a shovel full of dirt, and you take the soil and you pack it. If it stays caked, your moisture's fine. If you try and pack it and it crumbles, you need water. I don't know if you can apply that to your landscape or not, but there is a time when you have enough water and when you don't have enough water. That third one on the right, that's not enough water. Notice how much space is taken up by air and not much by water. At this point, the plant can no longer take the water from the soil particle. There is moisture there. Again, I mentioned I live out in south of Shafter. We've got 10 acres with 3/10 of a mile dirt road. I take care of the dirt road. We spray. We take care of weed control. Along comes July. Here comes a tumbleweed growing. And you say to yourself, why is this thing growing here? It hasn't rained in months. Dry as a bone. And here's this plant. Well, weeds, I go back to Genesis chapter 3 with the curse. Weeds have the ability to pull water from soil that the beneficial plants do not have. So that's why weeds can exist in environments that other plants can't. So you get to a point there, it's called a PWP, permanent wilting point. At that point, your grass begins to turn a bluish gray, plants begin to wilt, tree leaves begin to curl, and if you get moisture to it immediately, you can save the plant. If you don't do it right away, then it's going to die. The vascular pressure, the water through the plant just shuts down. Trees, the sap crystallizes. And it's kind of hard to get sap flowing through crystallized. You just can't do it. So once you get to PWP, you got a problem. If you don't get water to it right away, it's going to die. Now, one of the problems we have with people call us up and say yada, yada, yada. And one of the first questions is, well, how are you watering? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, well, I know it's getting enough water. And I say to them, well, how do you know? Well, because I'm running my sprinklers 10 minutes a day. I said, well, that's not enough. Well, if it's doing that, you don't have enough water. You maybe want to run the sprinklers 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. It's not enough water. Now, the key to water is going to be penetration. A couple of things can happen. You can put water on top of the ground, and it'll roll off, find some place, and go down there. It won't penetrate where it's put. Another thing can happen, and we've had this issue out front of our store. If you drive up, there's trees in there, and those trees have been here even since I was here, which is with the dinosaurs. But after time, the roots fill up the designated space they have. They're called this feeder roots or searching roots, and they're going to make a mat in there. We were running our sprinklers at 3 stations on the front yard, 40 minutes for each station. Our trees were dying. You could take a shovel, cut through the root mat, pull it up, and the grass, the soil was bone dry. 40 minutes for 3 stations, 120 minutes a day in the summertime. That's what we had to run those things, and the trees were dying. So you can get a point like this, even though the water is on top, it's not going down. So you have to discover why it's not penetrating. What we had to do, we had to go out there in summer. One of our staff had a hose and one of those water blasters, and we had to blast each of those trees. It took about an hour, hour and a half to do each tree. We did that 3 or 4 times to keep them alive through the end of the summer. And this winter we've gone in, there's a guy in town that puts down pipes below that root mat and actually waters the trees themselves. A separate watering system just for the trees. Once that happens, we can cut back the water on top of the ground because the grass is not in competition with the trees for water. So it should cut our water bill in half, basically. But again, we're getting enough water, 120 minutes a day, and the trees were dying. So you have to do some investigation. Just don't assume. If the plants are wilting, they're talking to you. It doesn't hurt to go out and get a shovel, dig in it, get a soil auger, drill down, get some kind of coring device, pound it in the ground, see how far ground your water is actually penetrating. But we can't have water and oxygen deficiencies in the soil. So one of the first things to check when you have problems with plants in the landscapes is watering. I should do some investigation. Generally we say your lawn is getting enough water if you can push a long-bladed screwdriver in the ground 7 inches easily. If you can do that, your water's penetration is fine. Same thing for flower beds and shrub areas. If you can push a long-bladed screwdriver in the ground 7 inches easily, then you got plenty of moisture. Then we'll bark and look up a second thing. You might have enough penetration, but it's not draining. So that's something to look. How long does that water stand on top of the ground? Does it ever dry out between waterings? It's not a bad thing to let your lawn or your flower bed dry out between waterings, at least the surface. Because a lot of times weeds, and we'll get to that little second part, but weeds can germinate on that top layer of soil. So if you allow that top 1/8 of an inch to dry out, 1/4 inch to dry out once in a while, you might keep any weeds that will germinate in that period, and they'll die because you let the water dry up. So we want to check that. But water and air deficiencies are the first things you should check when a plant, lawn, flower bed, shrub, tree has problems. Okay, any questions? If anybody has a question, just feel free, raise your hand any time, just go for it. Okay, other than water and air deficiencies, we can have weather factors, we can have mechanical factors, and we can have a soil environment. Soil environment is what the rest of this top part will be about. But these other factors, weather factors, if you have a tree that faces south or west, and you prune it up high where the trunk is exposed to that sun, you can do what's called sun scald. The tissues underneath your bark become so hot that they die. The bark peels back, and you've got this open wound on the side of your tree. Weather can be hot or cold wind. When the wind blows, trees especially, their leaves do what's called transpiration. Absorb carbon dioxide, give off water, oxygen. If those trees are exposed to a hot wind or cold wind, they can be deprived of water, or the water can freeze in them, and you can get a freeze damage to your trees. So sun, wind are things that can affect your landscape. Mechanical factors, pruning or compacting. If you're building a home or have some construction come in, sometimes people put a pool in their backyard and they'll run their equipment along the side of the house. Well, there was this big tree and they were compacting the soils. They run back and forth. They leave after 3 or 4 months of doing your pool, and a year later your tree starts dying. Well, what happened? Well, the soil got compacted while they were doing the work, and so soil compaction can be a problem. Incorrect pruning can be a problem. So these are some other things that can affect your landscape. And then the soil environment. If you think of where a plant is, the roots are down in the ground. That's a majority of the environment for a plant, especially its ability to uptake nutrients. So that's what the rest of this morning, the first session, is going to focus on, is your soil environment. Okay? I'm not proud of this. This is my garden. This is artichoke plants. I never knew artichokes could grow in Bakersfield until last summer. We got a variety called Globe. My wife loves artichokes. I mean, but anyway, we got 3. Guess what? The one in the middle ain't doing so good. You ever had that happen in your yard? You got 2 things 5 feet apart. One's doing good and one isn't. People come in here. I got 3 plants. The one in the middle is doing terrible. What's wrong? I mean, Okay. These are all 3 the same plant. We planted them all the same day, and they're different. Why? There's something in the soil. I've got a drip line to them. That little black snake down there. They all water the same. I check my water, check drainage. We've grown things in this part of the garden for many years. Decided to put them next to the outbuilding there to help them shield them from the west sun, because they're not necessarily grown in our area. But again, I've got one that's yellow. Okay? Something is in the soil, and I have to find out what's going on. Here's some broccoli plants. Again, I have a problem. They came from the same nursery, planted them the same day. They're all the same variety. What do you see? Different stages of growth, but they're all planted at the same time. Yes, ma'am.
How can that one plant be so good and the others not in the same area?
That's a good question.
I don't understand that.
We're going to help answer that. Yeah. It's a good question. Why? I mean, I take care of this. One thing that is different about this spot, several years ago when most of our kids left home, we took out an above-ground pool. I spaded that area, worked in a bunch of organic material, and this is the first year we're planting in that area. So part of this is new soil that's never been planted in before. So it lacks organic material, lacks nutrients, lacks the things in the soil what are called mycorrhiza fungi, microorganisms that convert things to nutrients that the plants can use. So part of it is just this is newly planted soil. But still, why is one over by the faucet, the other? This has a different drip line on it. This is called an Andrews soaker hose. I always had trouble with the other soaker hose I buy at Home Depot, Lowe's, because it seems like you hook them up and they drip all at this end and nothing down here. So these are excellent. Uniform water application through the whole run, so I know my watering is fine. But again, it's in the soil. Notice this is a shot from north to the south. Starts off big and just shoom. Once you get past that second or third plant, they're all pretty uniform. So there's something in the soil that's not allowing that plant to express itself genetically, optimal. Now I got a problem. The ones in the foreground, these are in the soil that I've worked and used before. It's richer soil. The ones in the back are the new soil. So again, when we're looking at problems in the landscape, abiotic, wind, sun, compaction, pruning, water and air deficiencies, and soil environment. Okay, so we have problems. So first thing I want to check, before that, this is a picture I took the other day. A little foggy. Coming down 7th Standard, headed east. There's a field on the south side of the road that has, I think, broccoli plants or something like that in it. And notice how uniform the plants are. I tried to get a good shot, but it's kind of foggy that day. But farmers will manage their soil professionally. They'll send in pH tests. They'll send in for all kinds of tests in the soil. They'll put the right kind of fertilizers down. They'll manage it because they want those plants to what? To produce as much as they can, as quick as they can. So that's what we're trying to do within the landscape environment, is to make those plants have the optimum conditions to express themselves genetically. Obviously, I'm still working on it. Okay. So we're going to look at soil fertility, availability of nutrients for plant uptake. What in the soil affects the ability of that plant to uptake nutrients? There's going to be three factors. Basically, you're looking at the ability of the plant to uptake nutrients. What is going to affect that ability?
Lack of nutrients.
Lack of nutrients is one. We're going to deal with that issue in a minute. Okay, three factors to consider. Number one is type of soil. What type of soil do you have? Matt, can you do me a favor?
Yes.
Some of the jars by the soil lab, could you bring them over for me, please? Those soil jars, if we don't have them already. So we're going to look at type of soil. There's three basic soil particles. These are your pHs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And we need the ones with the soil in them that have the settled out stuff. Type of soil. Soil pH and presence of nutrients in the soil. That's what the gentleman mentioned earlier, presence of nutrients in the soil. So we have these three things to consider. Type of soil. Okay, basically in soil you have three sizes of particles broken down by sizes. Sand, silt, clay. Sands are your largest. If you thought of relative terms of size, you'd have a basketball, silt would be a ping pong ball, clay would be a marble, small marble. Clay is very fine. If you put a bunch of clay particles together, because they're so small, there's not much of a soil pore. That's why clay soils are very hard to drain out. Silt, a little bit bigger, and sand has your largest particle. Ideally, a good soil, we're going to talk about a good soil here, will have a mixture of some of these in different proportions. One thing to note, only clay has CEC. CEC stands for cation exchange capacity. When we talk about ability of soil to transfer nutrients, there has to be this cation exchange capacity. Clay particles in the soil are negatively charged. They will attract positive ions to it. As that plant root goes through the soil and attaches itself to a clay particle, it allows the ability to uptake those nutrients. So, sand or silt do not have the ability to do that. So a good soil will have some clay, some means of transferring ions to the plant. So we have sand, silt, clay. Clay has CEC. Best type of soil is a sandy loam. It's 15 to 20% clay, 50 to 70% sand, and 0 to 30% silt. 0% silt is going to be the best. You have those. Is Matt coming with those jars? Huh? They're coming, okay. Okay, we need organic material in the soil. Organic material stands for OM. You can have sand, silt, and clay, but it's always good to have at least 30% organic material. Organic material helps with soil porosity. What do we mean by that? Opening those soil pores so that water can drain. Those soil microorganisms, those things in the soil, those organisms that change soil, change organic material, change the fertilizer you put on the ground into forms that the plants can uptake. There are chemical reactions going on in the soil that change those things so that the plants can uptake them. Moisture retention. Many people live in Bakersfield on the river bottom, sand, water just goes right through it. Even though some water stays around that sand particle, the soil pore is pretty big. So you need sand, organic material for that. Organic material has CEC. So clay and organic material give the ability of the plants to uptake those positive ions. And ideally you need 25 to 30% organic material. And that's right out of here. Lawns, trees, flower beds, shrubs, farming ground need at least 30% minimum of organic material. Bring them up, Matt. Dave. Oh, these ones?
Just the ones that tax the same. Organic.
Okay, I'm going to pass around some sample ones we've had on the soil lab. If you take a look in the light, there's gradients. This is sand, silts, and clays. This is one that has very little sand, at least large sand, some silt, clay, and some organic material, about maybe 1%. These are typical Kern County soils. So if you're looking for something that's going to have 70% sand, 30% clay, and we're going to reduce those proportions to get 30% organic material. I think this is Sharon soil. This one has a lot of silt, clay, very little sand in it, no organic material. When that stuff dries, it's hard as a rock. Anybody have that problem in their yard? Concrete. This one's pretty much the same as the other ones. It's got a little bit of organic material in it. But just pass it around, set them at the end of the thing. The way to test how much you have in the soil. See, that's the next slide here. Nope. Go back. Okay, forget it. The way to do that, take a jar. We'll probably get to the slide in a minute. Take a jar with a lid, fill it half full of water, dump some of your soil in it, put the lid on, shake it up, let it settle. Whatever settles out in the first 5 minutes is going to be your sand. Whatever settles out in the next 10 minutes are your silts. Whatever settles out in the next 15 to 30 minutes is going to be the clay. Whatever floats in the top is going to be your organic material. Okay? Now, take a look at your blue packet. Little handout in there that says how to, it says amending the physical nature of the soils. Amending the physical nature of the soils. If you open up that, there's a couple charts in there. Should be, I think, the last one in your stack.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
You didn't get that one in your packet? Okay. See if there's one in here. See if there's one in here. Can you get how to amending the physical nature of the soil? Some people didn't get that. There's a couple tables in there. One on the left talks for your turf. One on the right talks about planting trees, plants, shrubs. Let's take one look at the one on the left. This chart will give you the amount of cubic yards per 1,000 square feet of organic material that you need to achieve a certain percentage in the yard. Now let's say you want 30%. Say your soil looked like one of those that were passed around there. And you need to put 30% organic material in your soil. Ideally, you want to till it down to a depth of 6 inches. So if you look at the chart, 30% on the left-hand side. If you read across to where it says 6 inches in the column, how much do you need? .56 cubic yards per 1,000 square feet. I know, got to answer that. I circled it. Make it easy for you. Actually, it's on our master, so we did that way. But you have 5.6, little over 5 cubic yards of material. Now we sell redwood compost we use for this particular purpose. It's a 3 cubic foot bale. 9 of those makes a cubic yard. So on 1,000 square feet, you need 5.6 times 9 bales. That's what it takes to put that amount of volume in there. Some people have had to take off a couple inches of soil because that's going to be about 2 inches on the ground before you work it in. Most people don't think about putting that much down there, don't have the money to invest, do a couple bags, and then wonder why it doesn't change. You have to do at least 25% to make a physical change in the soil. We have some customers, several years ago in the northeast part of town, would come in and buy a pallet at a time. a pallet a year, and they would spend each year working a certain section of the yard, working it into the ground, plant shrubs. Eventually they got it done, but they do a little bit at a time. But they'll buy a whole pallet of 49 bags at a time. But that's how much it takes to amend the physical nature of the soil. So if you have one of those jars that's all silt, sand, and need 30%, that's what you have to look at. Chart on the other side, the right-hand side there, this is planting shrubs, 1 gallon containers, up to 60-inch box trees. We suggest hole size over here, twice as wide deep plus half a foot. We suggest the bottom one. You dig a hole twice as wide and twice as deep as what you're going to put in there. Save the top 8 to 10 inches. That's your topsoil. Mix that with a amount. It gives you two rates here: a third, 33%, or 50%. We suggest 50% organic material. That's what you use as your backfill when you plant. So that tells you how much organic material you need. Let's say you're going to plant a 15-gallon tree. You dig a hole twice as wide and twice as deep as what you need, and you're going to go a 50% ratio. You need 5.5 cubic feet of material. So again, most people don't do the initial prep, don't do the initial planting. 2, 3, 4 years later, come along, the tree begins to have trouble. Did not have a good foundation. Anyway, that's right out of the Western Fertilizer Handbook. That tells you how to use and amend the physical nature of the soil. Yes, ma'am?
I dug the depth I was supposed to, everything.
Okay.
I planted plants, and like a year later they're dead, and I look, and the roots just have not spread at
Right.
all. It's like they just sat in there. Is that my soils?
Yeah. Yes, part of that can be soil. When those roots begin to spread out, they need several things to explore. If they run into a barrier such as an acid soil or an alkaline soil, or a soil that for some reason this doesn't, they'll stop, they'll die. They won't do that exploration that they need to do. So yeah, and we'll look at that in a little bit too. So that's what we need to amend the physical nature of the soil. One thing you realize that in that chart, if you're going to invest money, let's say you plant a 15-gallon tree and you're going to take 5.5 cubic feet, say 2 of those bales of redwood compost for $8 each, you're going to spend money. Now, the last thing you want to do is not have it work. So one thing to check out is the rates of decomposition for organic material. You want to put something in the soil that isn't going to decompose in 3 or 6 months or 9 months. The bottom, the worst, are manures, peats, compost of leaves, and grass clippings. If you mix those into it, 3, 4, 5 months later, the top is going to start sinking, because those are going to decompose and go to nothing. That volume you thought you had there is just going to decompose. So when you do this, use redwood, fir, cedar, or rice hulls. Now we have redwood compost and we have the fir mulch. Kellogg's makes a product called Amend that has rice hulls in it. But you want something that is long lasting. If you're going to spend the money, take the time and the effort, you want something that's going to last in the soil.
How long is redwood going to last?
Years.
How deep do you have to go with it?
For lawns, you want to till it into the top 6 inches. If you're planting trees and shrubs, you're twice as wide, twice as deep hole. Save the top 8 to 10 inches. That's what you mix in a wheelbarrow, 50-50 that, and then use that as your backfill.
What if you already have a flower bed and you want to put new stuff?
If you already have flower beds, put stuff in, that's harder to do. But what we suggest, take a soil auger, some kind of coring device, make a hole, put that organic material in the hole, and every year just do different holes. So over a period of time, you begin to change the composition of that soil.
How deep would you put it all?
If it's trees, I'd go 12, 18 inches deep, or 24 inches deep. For lawn, you can plug it, drill holes. Well, one of our staff members, Chuck, he's drilled 167 holes in his backyard. Filled them with pea gravel just to get the drainage. The lawn looks great. But, yes, sir.
You said you had a guy come and put some pipe in the ground by your
Yes.
out front. Can you put the mixture down in there? I put like 2-inch pipe PVC down,
Mm-hmm.
From 24 inches, 20 inches when I planted the trees.
Okay.
Could I put fertilizer, just put it in that?
If you're going to drill, the question is, if you drill a hole or drill a pipe down, do you want to put organic material in the pipe? No, I would not put it in the pipe because that's only localizing its effect. In the pipe, you just leave it open or put pea gravel in it because you want it to drain. But the organic material actually has to be in places where the roots are going to come in contact with it and grow and search out for it. But you'll need to spread it out.
So if you haven't done it, it would be a good idea then just to make a hole down around
Yes.
the roots and then fill that.
Yeah. Make your holes and then fill those with the stuff. Yeah. And, okay, how to test the physical nature, texture of the soil. This is your test. Glass jar with lid, fill half the water, fill a quarter soil, shake it up and let it settle out. Yes, sir.
You mentioned on an existing lawn, drilling down and putting in pea gravel.
Yes.
About how far apart, how deep should the hole?
Okay, on an existing lawn, if you need drainage and you're drilling holes, how far apart can they go? Ideally, you want one every square yard. But the more, the better.
And how deep should it go?
You want to go past the root zone? How deep do you go? Go past the root zone. He went down like 12, 18 inches. Fill the pea gravel. And that's the solution for soil that doesn't drain. You have to drill holes, fill those holes with pea gravel, and then give a place where that moisture can percolate down. So if you want to have a test, if you want to do that, bring your soil and we'll take a look at it. Let's shake it up, take a test, see what you're going to do with it first. There's a book I bought. I was hoping it would be here by today. It's called Up by Roots. Has to do a lot with what we're dealing with here, how to get the roots to where they can grow and uptake the nutrients. And there's a picture of a big cat diesel with shanks on the back of it. And the idea is ripping the soil, get it open. But, how do you do that in established existing landscapes? It's very difficult to do that. We have, where we live, down on the corner, there's a family that bought 20 acres, that had almond trees on it. In the agricultural, I've seen them do it. They'll take a D9 cat, they'll put a 7-foot shank on the end of it, and they'll go up and down, up and down, back and forth on that field. I saw one time where they had 2 D9s chained together, and they were shanking a field. That opens that soil, allows the moisture to drain, allows the roots to go down, allows for the trees to be healthy. They never shank the field at this place, so their trees are limited on how they can grow in their production. Trees are only like 6 years old, 7 years old, but they can't. They're limited because that soil doesn't drain. Salts build up there, and the trees are limited in what they can do. So adequate drainage is key. Got to get the water to move past through the root zone. Okay, ideal layering in your thing is organic material 20 to 50%, sand 50 to 60%, clay 10 to 20%. That's ideal soil to plant in. Okay, this picture is also from the Western Fertilizer Handbook. I included that because a lot of construction, especially if they put in that, what they call it, the canyons, they're going to do a lot of cutting and filling. And 3 different soil levels. A is your horizon. That's generally what's considered your topsoil. The B horizon is your subsoil. C horizon is just junk dirt. We've actually had people come in where they've built on the side of a mountain. They've cut the mountain out, and now they're going to try and plant trees, plants. They'll bring a soil in, but it's B and C horizon soil. That soil is never designed to support living things, and they're going to have to plant into it. So if something like that comes up, you have a lot of work to do. But there are different levels of soil within that. Okay, 3 factors to consider. Type of soil, soil pH. Soil pH is your second one. Measure the acidity or alkalinity of the soil. What I'd like to do, let's just take a 5-minute stretch break before we get into the next section here. Get yourself another cup of coffee, get some goodies. Yes, sir?
I know it's not right now, but
What zone are we for planting, like in the sunset zone? We're pretty mild, like 7 or 8. So there's 3 factors to consider. We're dealing with Again, the big picture, we're dealing with abiotic problems of plants and landscape. Abiotic meaning having nothing to do with living things. Environment, water, air deficiencies. You can have pruning, mechanical problems, sun, wind, and the soil environment. Dealing with the soil environment, there's three things to consider. The soil texture or type of soil you have. We dealt with that a little bit and adding organic material to it. Now we're going to look at soil pH. It's a measure of the acidity or alkalinity of the soil. Within the soil, there's a certain range at which maximum nutrients are available to the plants. Anybody have a swimming pool or know somebody has one, taking care of them? You put chlorine in it. You also adjust the acidity or alkalinity. Why do you do that? You can have the right chlorine, but you have the right pH for that chlorine to work effectively. Same thing with plants. There's an optimum range of pH in the soil where the maximum number of nutrients are available to the plant. So one of the things we do here, we offer a test to test your acidity or alkalinity of the soil. pH scale. Acid is less than 7. Neutral is 7. And alkaline is anything above 7 on the pH scale. So someone would say that my soil pH is 8.0. That's above 7, so that will be an alkaline soil. So we'd say, well, my soil is 4.5 pH. That's less than 7, so that's going to be an acid soil. Acidity and alkalinity have a lot to do with the chemical reactions that go on within the soil. It has a lot to do with the availability of nutrients to the plants. Nutrient availability for plant uptakes depends on the soil pH. In your packet, got a little chart here. Where is everything green? Right down the middle. The bottom is your pH scale. The closer you get to 7, the more nutrient availability you have for plant uptake. These are the different nutrients. The width of that bar indicates availability at that particular pH. So for instance, iron is readily available at acid soils, but you get up to alkaline soils, it becomes less available. So right down the middle is where you want to be. Obviously there are some plants, rhododendrons, camellias, azaleas, that like soil a little more on the acid soil, but those are going to be the exceptions. A general rule is you want a 7 to 7.2 pH. Somebody have a question? Yes, sir.
When you buy plants, would it say on the bucket or whatever you buy the plants in, the kind of soil that
Okay, when you buy plants, does it say on the package or what kind of soil it needs? That it may or may not. It may say acid loving soil. You may need to ask the people you bought it from, or the Sunset landscape book would have information like that. But it's a good thing to check.
What does clay come up typically on?
Clay? A straight clay on a pH scale?
Northeast.
Generally in the northeast, you're alkaline. What's the pH scale in the northeast? It's mostly alkaline. But it's not necessarily just the clay, it's the other things in the soil that cause that. But generally on the northeast part of town, you're going to be alkaline. That's the pH chart. Maximum availability of nutrients is at a pH of 7.0 to 7.2. This is important to understand the principal limiting factors. Plant growth can be no greater than that allowed by the most limiting of the essential plant growth factors. For instance, take a look at your chart. Let's say you're at a pH of 8.5. What nutrients are not available or less available at an 8.5 pH? Okay, copper and zinc, boron, manganese, iron. So if you're limited on what you can do here, the plant can only make so many cells. The plant can only grow so fast. Move the pH down, and what happens? Those become available. Now your plant can start producing cells, growing again. The way I like to, if you illustrate it as a production line for cars. Let's say you have 100 engines, 50 bodies, and only 20 tires. How many cars can you make? 5. Why? 4 tires per car. 4 into 20 is 5. You only make 5 cars. Now, you might try and do something different. You might try and put 2 tires on each, the front or the back. Did you make a car? Would it go? Maybe. But it wouldn't go as good. So plants can grow, plants can move along, but they're not healthy. They don't grow right. Very susceptible to diseases. So maximum availability is 7.0 to 7.2. Non-neutral soils. Acidic soil, restricted availability of nutrients, and aluminum becomes toxic. In alkaline soils, nutrients form insoluble hydroxide compounds. Now, you don't have to know what all that means. It's just that nutrients are tied up in the soil. They're not available to the plant. Another thing that happens, I was reading a book the other day on soil chemistry and microbiology. Soil chemistry, the pH has an effect on what are called reduction, oxidation reactions within the soil. So the organisms in soil lack the ability to take the things you put down, change that into a form that the plant needs. So it affects the chemical reactions in the soil, affects the availability of nutrients, not only whether they're available or not, but just that whole process of what the organisms do in the soil. So it's very important to have your soil pH checked, tested. Let's see. The Garden Supply, believe it or not, you heard of Ripley's, believe it or not. This is Gardener Supply, believe it or not. Customer came in, brought some pictures. This was his lawn. Backyard. He actually rented a mechanical plugger, plugged it, couldn't get anything to grow, watered it, couldn't get anything to grow, nothing happened. Came into us. He said, well, bring us a soil sample. He did, his acid soil. So, 6 weeks later, an application of Pellime and 7-20-20, this is his lawn. Well, he was trying all the right things, but just had lacked that one ingredient. Okay, I've got a couple things here. David, are you available?
Yes, sir, please.
Pass these things out. Are these for everything? Do you have any acid soils?
There's a sample back there. I think it's those coffee.
Okay. If you bring a soil sample in, we'll fill out this sheet. Pre-plant existing area, how many square feet you have, lawn, tree, shrub, flower bed. A, we want to know if you've used ammonium sulfate or urea in the past. B, we want to know if you've done anything in the last 30 days that can interfere with your chemical results. We'll ask you some symptoms. We have a digital pH meter, costs about $400. We have probes that cost about $90. We replace those about 3 or 4 times a year. So these are expensive to run. It's a service we provide. This is John something. Kvasnica. Okay. Here's a 7.7 pH. So is this alkaline or acid? It's alkaline because it's above 7. Little teeny bit, not much, but a little bit can make a whole big difference. So we're going to do. Problem is high pH, low phosphorus. Now, we're going to talk about that low phosphorus in a little bit, but phosphorus availability in our soils is very limited. So as a high pH, so solution is FST. That stands for Ferro Soil Till. I was talking to a gentleman back here. He uses FST. And 7-20-20 fertilizer. The FST will go down, number one application, rates, FST 15 pounds per 1,000 square feet. And 7-20-20, 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet. And then notes, use 7-20-20 every 4 weeks. 7-20-20 is your fertilizer. We'll talk about the different numbers and what they do. But FST contains sulfur, 19% sulfur. It lowers soil pH. So if you have an alkaline soil, we want to use sulfur to lower your soil pH. We do not have a sample of an acid soil, but if you had an acid soil, we would use pelletized limestone to raise the soil pH. And we're going to have a slide on that in a minute. So basically what we do, we'll analyze the pH of the soil and make recommendations based on what your pH is. Any questions on that? Some of you brought samples today. If you need your jars back, they're up here. Skippy. Anybody Skippy? Okay, there's a 7.2. pH is good. Here's Jen. Oh, Skippy peanut butter jar? Okay. That's Bonnie. That's Bonnie, yeah. Chuck did that to you, you know?
Yeah.
He did that to you. Yeah, your pH is fine. So, again, somebody will say, well, I have plants that have a problem, my pH is fine. Well, all that does is eliminate soil pH as the problem you have. So it's actually a good thing. Whether you find something out or not, you've eliminated or you found a cause of the problem. Jan Jackson, raise your hand. That's okay. You have an 8.0. So you need...
Well, I took it in a place where right by the house.
You took it in a place right by the house, okay. Okay, but you got one. It's an 8.0. If you have something planted there, it can do better if you adjust the soil pH. But you have an 8.0. That other box says CA. That's calcium bicarbonate ion. We test that with a fizz test of a product called Eximo, which is a synthetic acid. You put that on the soil, and with the presence of bicarbonate ion, it fizzes. And if bicarbonate ions are high, you can have a situation called Lyme-induced chlorosis. And what that does is that precipitates out some of the positive nutrients that you need. We'll go over that here in a little bit. And they're not available to the plant, and the plant turns yellow. Chlorosis means it's yellow. But so you're bordering on that place where you can start having problems with that terrible thing called Lyme-induced chlorosis. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, but we test pH, and we test bicarbonate level ion. Any questions on those? Looking at? Okay, so importance of a soil sample. Which soil amendment to use, if any? Do we use sulfur or do we use pelletized limestone? And we check levels of bicarbonate ion. Soil samples are soil science, not mumbo jumbo. I mentioned last year, we have a lot of people come in when they'll start asking about their lawn, and they'll say, well, you can bring us a soil sample, or what kind of lawn do you have? Don't give me that mumbo jumbo, I just want some fertilizer. Okay, here's what's taking going, fine. But a couple years ago, I heard an ad from one of our other competitors in town, and the ad was, we don't give you any of that mumbo jumbo. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, somebody left here dissatisfied, which I don't like to do, but they went someplace else, and all they do over there, they just give you mumbo jumbo. So they used that in an ad. But soil samples are not soil science, they're not mumbo jumbo. We're trying to do the best we can to help you in your lawn, in your environment, have the best looking yard on the block. Okay, use of soil amendment, sulfur, used to lower soil pH. Check solubility before applying. There's a reason I mentioned that. A lot of times you will see things advertised to do certain things. Check it out. There are different forms of sulfur. There's a sulfur called Tiger 90, which is mixed in some lawn and garden products. It's a 9-month release rate. It's an agriculturally designed slow-release source of sulfur. If you put that in a lawn and garden material and you put that on your lawn, how long is it going to take for your soil pH to change? 9 months. We buy, and it comes from Texas, out of Kilgore, Texas. It's called the dispersal, lawn and garden sulfur. It's very soluble. Put it in the lawn, and within 2 weeks, it's beginning to disintegrate, beginning to act already in the soil. So what the best way to do is take a little dish, put some water in it, put some of the stuff in it, stir it up, see how fast it breaks down in the water. Ironite. Very common, advertised. Most people have it, but it's very insoluble. It takes a long time to work. Make a cheap product, charge you money for it, spend a lot of money for advertising. So be careful if you get some, take a solubility test. Lime is used to raise soil pH. You may take multiple applications. It's more difficult, I'm going to make sure my English right, it's more difficult to raise soil pH than it is to lower it. Somebody's shaking their head over here. There's a problem. Yep. Yeah. Someone will come in and say, well, I got a 5.0 pH. We'll suggest Lime at 50 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Retest in 4 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks later, they come in, their pH is a 5.2. I put 50 pounds of Lime down. You're charging me $12.99 for the bag of Lime. You tell me I need more. Yes, I'm telling you need more. It's harder to raise acid. I could explain it to you, but then I'd have to shoot you. There's chemical reasons for that, but it is harder to raise soil pH. So if you do have an acid soil, it takes multiple applications. That's just the way it is. Yes, Bonnie?
So could that be the reason why if I've got a pH of 7.2, I'm having to supplement substantially my acidic loving plants, my gardenias, my myrtles, my magnolias?
Okay, question is, suppose I have a 7.2 pH and I need to substantially amend the soil for the acid-loving plants. That could be part of it, just because of the nature of the acidity.
Is really struggling.
Yeah. But it's chemistry, it evolves with the reactions, and that's just the nature of acid soils. Whether getting them to be acid or raising them up to neutral. It'd be a problem. Okay, gypsum. A lot of people put down gypsum. That's fine. Shoot from the hip. Gypsum is an excellent product to use in 99% of the situations. It's used to leach sodium, which causes alkali in the soil. Other positive ions in the soil interfere with soil nutrients. Calcium is pH neutral. Now, if you put copious amounts of calcium down, you may change the pH a little bit, but we're going more with sulfur to change an alkaline soil to lower the soil pH. Okay, 3 factors to consider: type of soil, sand, silt, clay, organic material presence, soil pH, is it acid, is it neutral, is it alkaline, and then presence of nutrients in the soil. Going back to what the gentleman mentioned earlier, those nutrients have to be there. They have to be there in certain ratios in order for the plants to uptake them all together and express itself to the best of its optimum growth, to express itself the best. Essential nutrients for plant growth. I mentioned earlier 17 of them. They're divided into major, secondary, and minor. Major nutrients are those that the plant needs in greater abundance than the others. For some of the minor nutrients versus hydrogen is 10 to the 17th power. Anybody know what 10 to the 17th power is? It's a 1 with what? 17 zeros behind it. So for every that many hydrogen ions, you need 1 of these others. The hydrogen and oxygen, carbon come from the air. The other things need to be in the soil, either there already or supplemented by you and I. Major nutrients, secondary, and minor. Major nutrients are the 3 numbers on a bag. Mentioned earlier in a soil sample here, we suggested 7-20-20 fertilizer. 7-20-20. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. NPK. Those are major nutrients. In a label, it's expressed as percentage by weight. So you have a sample in your packet. Professional's Choice Spring Blend. The 20-5-10 plus 4% iron. So what that label tells you, this package by weight is 20% nitrogen, 5% phosphorus, and 10% potassium. So it's NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, 4% iron sucrate. That's non-staining iron. Iron sulfate stains. Gives your concrete the rust mark. Iron sucrate does not stain. That's why we put it in here. Other nutrients. If you look at the label, it says total nitrogen, 1% ammoniacal, 19% urea with a little asterisk. The asterisk takes you down to the bottom, says 10% slowly available urea nitrogen from Lesco Poly Plus sulfur-coated urea. So Sulfur-coated urea is a slow-release nitrogen source. So it releases slowly, so the plants grow slower. So you're not mowing as much when you mow. You're taking less clippings off. You mow faster, less wear and tear on your equipment. Better for the environment. This is a green fertilizer. Oh, a green label. There you go. But that's what we do. We'll manage the NPK. Then it says available phosphoric acid 5%, soluble potash 10%, sulfur is 5%. That comes from the sulfur-coated urea. And iron 4%. Now the 5% sulfur, and generally in Bakersfield, our water is an average delivered pH of 8.0. So over time, that's why our soils are generally alkaline, because over time the water evaporates off, leaves behind the alkaline producing salts, so generally our soils are alkaline. Once your soil pH is adjusted, using our fertilizers, you can maintain a pH balance, because there is sulfur in the sulfur-coated urea. So hopefully once your pH is adjusted, you should be able to maintain that without further adjustment. It'll give you nutrients derived from, and here's the key: monoammonium phosphate, sulfate of potash, urea, polycoat sulfur-coated urea, and iron sucrate. The key here is sulfate of potash. We're going to look at that in a minute, but that's a more beneficial form of potassium. All of our fertilizers are blended with it. So if you read a fertilizer label, when you buy something in the store, read the label, see what things are. If you go to Scott's will typically be high in the first number, low in the second two. They do that for a couple reasons. Number one, I've been back to the Scott's Turf Institute. They blend their fertilizer for, number one, eastern, midwestern soils, and number two, Kentucky bluegrass. Neither of which we have here. It will give you like a 33-2-3. Look on the back of the label, it'll say 33% nitrogen derived from such and such and such. And it'll, down at the bottom, it will give you 6% slowly available from methylene ureas. 33% nitrogen, only 6% is slow release. So that means you have 27% by weight, fast release nitrogen. It's going to pump growth. You're going to mow. 3 or 4 weeks later, it's petered out. You need to go again. We try to avoid that. But anyway, that's the numbers on the bag: 2510 NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Any questions? Okay, sources of nitrogen. I mentioned on the label ammoniacal nitrogen, urea nitrogen, sulfur-coated urea. There are 3 types of nitrogen sources. One is nitrates, immediately available. When you put a nitrogen down on the lawn, the soil microorganisms have to convert that to a nitrate, NO3-1. When soil temperatures cool, that reaction takes slower in the wintertime. So your winter fertilizers will be formed with some type of nitrate immediately available to the plant. When you put it down, water it in, the plant can take it up like that because it does not have to be converted. So this time of year, what are we selling? We're selling a Turf Royale 21-7-14. Half of the 21 is a nitrate nitrogen. Why? Breaks down right into the plant. Fast release, urea and sulfate of ammonia, they take a week or two. Soil temperatures warm up. Microorganisms in the soil begin the chemical process of breaking the nitrogen source down, converts it to nitrate, plants uptakes it, you got your nitrogen. Slow release, sulfur-coated urea, SCU, polyform, and methyl ureas. Those are slow release forms. So look at the label on the bag. See what sources of nitrogen it has. Is it going to pump a lot of growth and you're going to be mowing a jungle for the first 2 weeks and then nothing? Or is it going to provide a continuous feed through slow release nitrogen for an extended period of time with slow growth? So check your nitrogen out. Nitrates you need in the wintertime. Generally, your slow release is more for your spring, summer, and fall. Any questions? Okay, nitrogen is stem and shoot growth and green color. Kentucky bluegrass not only shoots up on top, but it also shoots underground. It's not like Bermuda grass that has the stolons and runners. It's a fleshy shoot. That's why you have to have higher sources of nitrogen, but that's all on the East Coast. Fescue? It'll be the grass blades that the nitrogen shoots up. Okay, phosphorus, the middle number on a fertilizer formula. It's responsible for rooting. Generally, if you want to check your roots, say your lawn, take a PVC pipe, drive it in the ground, 6, 7, 8 inches, pull it out, knock the core out, put that core underneath a hose bib, wash the dirt off it. See how long your roots actually are. Your roots should be 6 to 7 inches long, ideally. But check your root length. Phosphorus encourages root growth. That's why when we make a soil adjustment, like that one we looked at, the fertilizer we use is 7-20-20. Because when you adjust the pH, all of a sudden these nutrients are available. 20% phosphorus, the middle number, gives the roots the encouragement to go out and explore and get the nutrients that now are available to the plant. So high middle number. That's a picture of some Bermuda in my backyard. A couple years ago we had to dig out for our septic tanks. This was uncompacted soil, so where I dug it out before. But we got some roots down there that are 18 inches long. Okay, phosphorus also does fruiting, both plants and trees. Also does flowering in ornamentals. So if you think of nitrogen as stem and shoot growth, phosphorus is rooting, fruiting, and flowering. So any fertilizer that's for ornamental, for blooming plants, should always be behind the middle number. Over there on the shelf we have a product called Super Bloom. It's 12, 55, 8, I think. Why? Why is the middle number so high? Because you're pushing blooms. Phosphorus. Available soil phosphorus may be only 1% or less of the total phosphorus present in the soil. That's directly out of the Western Fertilizer Handbook. So phosphorus is a major nutrient, NPK. Plants need in copious amounts. And yet in the soil, of all the phosphorus present in the soil, only 1% is available to the plant. You need to supplement your fertilization program with phosphorus. So 7-20-20. Several years ago we consulted at Buena Vista Golf Course. We don't do that anymore because they've changed concessioners out there. But they were using 7-20-20, 20% phosphorus, 7 to 8 pounds per 1,000 square feet on their greens once a month. Tested beginning of one season, went to the end of the other season, and the phosphorus amount was the same. There was no accumulation of phosphorus in the soil. It was all utilized by the plant. Some of our maintenance gardeners, some of our homeowners, you mentioned fescue yard, they use 7-20-20 once a month from March through November to encourage the root growth, just give a good plant. So you have to supplement phosphorus. There's a movement in the fertilizer industry for phosphor-free fertilizers. Have you ever heard about that? Back in the East, where your water table is real shallow, they're afraid the phosphates get in the water table. So they're actually telling people don't use it. They have enough phosphorus in the soil already because of the organic material they have, the rain, the decomposition. They don't need it, but we do. So the problem's going to come is if that makes federal mandate where it applies to the entire United States, then we're going to be in trouble. But right now we need, in western soils, we need supplemental phosphorus. Potassium, NPK, potassium, overall plant health. It's kind of like the vitamin C for plants. This to do with cell wall thickness, also helps with flowering. Key thing here is cell wall thickness. Mentioned earlier, when you have the cold and hot winds, can dry out leaf tissue. If because you have a lack of potassium, your cell wall is thin, it's easier to desiccate or dry it out than if it has a thick cell wall. It's also easier for fungus to attack, which we're going to talk about in the next section, a plant that has a thin cell wall versus a thick cell wall. So cell wall thickness has a lot to do with plant survival and plant health. So potassium in amounts that the plants can use, overall plant health, vitality. Problem with potassium There's two sources. One is potassium chloride, or called muriate of potash. One is called potassium sulfate, or sulfate of potash. Potassium sulfate or sulfate of potash is the best, but it's more expensive. That's why we blend all of our fertilizers with potassium sulfate. It's a better form of potassium. It has a lower fertilizer burn index. I'll show you a picture in a minute what that means. But it is more expensive. I would lay you, I'm not a betting man, but I would lay you odds. We go buy any bag of fertilizer at a box store that's a name brand. They're going to have muriate of potash or potassium chloride in it. It's cheap. In acid soils, the effect of the chloride ion can be masked. But what do we have here in Kern County? We have mostly what? Alkaline soils. So, always check the label. Talked earlier about the fertilizer burn index. This was a test trial. The slide where the yellowing is, that was potassium chloride put down. Where the green is, that's potassium sulfate. So potassium sulfate is your safer form of potassium. It's more easily absorbed by the plant, and thus has better effects. Also another chloride effect here. In a minute when we get to some pictures, we'll show you something there too. Okay, potassium. Large amounts of potassium are removed from the soil when the vegetative growth is removed, as with asparagus, celery, cabbage, lettuce, and what? Turf grass. Every time you mow, what's happening? You're removing potassium from the soil. So again, as with phosphorus, potassium needs to be put back in the soil supplementally. There are University of California professors that will stand up and say, all you need is ammonium sulfate for your lawn. I will argue with them until they won't change their mind. There's a saying, indefensible ignorance cannot be enlightened. And that's the way I feel that doesn't. But these quotes are right out of here. They can study this as well as I can. So when you mow, you remove potassium from the soil. It has to be put back in through proper fertilization practices. Secondary nutrients: sulfur, calcium, magnesium. These are the nutrients that are needed in the next level, the major nutrients, minor nutrients. Sulfur, calcium, magnesium, and they'll be listed on the label if they're present. Sulfur deficiency looks like nitrogen deficiency, a yellowing of the turf, a yellowing of the plant. Sulfur may be deficient due to dry fertilizers formulated with potassium chloride. We use Turf Supreme, we use some we buy at a box store time and time again. There's no application of sulfur, becomes depleted in the soil, lawn starts to look a little yellow. Well, because the sulfur has not been replaced. Calcium. It's needed for structural membrane of the plant, overall rigidity, new cell formation, and cannot be translocated within the plant. Just like you and I need calcium for what? Strong bones, yeah. Don't make your plants have osteoporosis. They need calcium. In alkaline soils where calcium availability can be quite low, supplemental calcium is often required to adequately supply the plants. So generally once a year we'll suggest an application of pelletized limestone at 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet just for calcium nutrient. We'll look at a slide here in a minute. But calcium needs to be added. So use pellet lime at the rate of 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet at least once a year.
When is the best time to apply that?
I would do it in the spring when plants are, everything's kind of waking up for the winter. Good growth, shoot growth, root growth. When's the best time to plant? Use in the spring. Apply. Magnesium, used for photosynthesis in plant tissue, used for optimum bloom production and quality. Many of your rose enthusiasts will say use Epsom salts on your plant. Epsom salts is magnesium sulfate. They want it for the magnesium and the sulfur. There's a product called Sulfomag, sulfur, potassium, magnesium. It's a 0022 with magnesium. So you also get the added benefit of potassium as well as your magnesium. And potassium is used for flowering. So if you grow roses, competitively or not, and you wanted to have the best looking blooms, I would suggest using Sulfomag in addition to your regular fertilizer.
Randy,
Yes.
what other plants would appreciate a supplement with magnesium?
What other plants would appreciate? Any kind of blooming, flowering plant would do it, but it seems like it's especially critical in roses, just because I guess the vitality, the beauty of the bloom, the rose.
Myrtles?
Anything that would bloom would benefit from it, yes. Yes, sir.
Azaleas,
Uh,
camellias could also.
I believe they would, because it's part of the flower formation. Azaleas, camellias,
And then the bulbs?
anything that has bloom. Huh?
How, let's say you know when the plant's going to typically bloom, when would you apply that? A month before?
If you know when the plant's going to typically bloom, you want to give it time to get in the system, be metabolized, be part of it. I would do at least 1 or 2 months before, because the plant's going to always store it. Yes, sir.
How is the soil condition for a rose bush compared to like a Bermuda grass?
Okay, how's this condition for a rose compared to Bermuda grass? You want the same type soil, 7.0 to 7.2 pH, 30% organic material, and proper nutrients. Some plants are, and again, go back to that chloride, potassium sulfate. Some plants are especially sensitive to chloride ions. Grapes, roses, tomatoes are especially sensitive to chloride ions. So roses especially. This is another thing you don't have to pay for. I'll give you this free. Many people use a rose systemic with fertilizer. Okay. There's a couple brands out there. Bayer makes one. Orthos make one. If you look on the label, nutrients derived from, it will say muriate of potash, potassium chloride. And roses are very sensitive to chloride ions. Why do they do that? Because it's cheap. They spend their money on advertising. We carry the Bayer. If you want the Bayer, we got the Bayer. We also carry the Dexol brand. If you look up here behind you, this is our warehouse over here. All those pallets back there, and the back shelf are cases of Dexol rose food, systemic. The manufacturer had 5,000 jugs left. How many do I want? I wanted as many as I could get. Dexol is blended with potassium sulfate. Same fertilizer numbers, 8, 12, 8. Looking at, well, this is 8, 12, 8, this is 8, 12, 8, this is $5, this is, I'll take this. Now, Bayer's raised the price, so now the Dexol is even cheaper. We've had people visit our website, they'll call us. One guy called us from Indiana. Can you ship that back to me? I can't find it anywhere. It's a better fertilizer than the Bayer, but I can't find it. We're not set up to ship, I'm sorry. But so, it takes looking at the label, knowing a little bit about it, but magnesium is for your bloom. Minor nutrients may be listed on the label if they're present. Iron, manganese, boron, copper, zinc, molybdenum, chlorine, cobalt, and nickel. Chlorine is a micronutrient. Plants do need it, but micro amounts, not the macro amounts that you put if you put, NPK down there with the potassium chloride. Iron and manganese. Modern day research says those are absorbed in a 3-to-1 ratio. So look on the label. What's your percentage of iron and manganese? I want to talk about that in a minute. Boron. Boron is a necessary nutrient, but in large amounts it can become toxic to plants. I'll show some pictures here in a minute. Zinc. Zinc is necessary in nut formation. The gentleman here was talking about his pecan trees. The pecans are small. It may be a zinc deficiency. We used to sell zinc sulfate. Little bag of powder stuff, you mixed up and sprayed it. It had a danger label on it. Skull and crossbones right on the bag. So guess what? Then take it off the market in California. Excuse me. The only way I can sell zinc to you now is in the lead iron, and it's 2% zinc. That's all you got. But it's a necessary nutrient for nut production. So, minor nutrients are needed, but in small amounts.
Give some Zycam.
Pardon?
Give us some Zycam.
Yeah, Zycam. There's lots of zinc in the Zycam. I can't smell because of that stuff. And I didn't get in on the class action suit, so I don't have my money. But anyway. Ironite, lead iron, organic material. Again, ironite's highly publicized, highly bought product. Look at the ratios of iron and manganese. Last time I looked last year was 12% iron, 0.5% manganese. That's nowhere near a 3-to-1 ratio. Elite iron, 20% iron, 8% manganese. Is that closer to the 3-to-1 ratio? Yes, it is. So again, be careful. Get the right stuff. Organic material, stuff you work back into the lawn, ground, leaves, grass clippings. I take my garden areas, my leaves, I put them out there, I rototill them in, my grass clippings, any organic material to feed back to the soil. Most minor nutrients are available in the soil as long as the soil is pH neutral. Again, another reason to have a pH check, but you may need to add supplemental minor nutrients occasionally. I do it in my yard once a year in the spring. I go through and renovate my yard, put down some fir mulch, some soil penetrant, some lead iron, and some 7-20-20, my pre-emergent. Again, principal limiting factors. You got to have all of them in the proper ratios for best optimum plant health. Okay, some examples of nutrient deficiencies. This is some grapes. The normal leaf is on the right-hand side. Deficient ones are on the left. This is a phosphorus deficiency. Notice the outside edge margin is yellow, what we call chlorotic. It also has some of that russeting, little red spots, purplish red spots on it. That's typical of phosphorus deficiency. This is iron deficiency in grass, overall yellow look. Zinc deficiency on citrus. If you look at the leaves are coming out are smaller. It's called rosetting when the new growth is small. And if you look at the limb, the leaf, the main rib is dark green, the side branches are green, and then the yellow's in between it. Kind of looks like a Christmas tree. That's a zinc deficiency. This is iron and manganese deficiencies. Iron in the yellowing, and then the manganese with the blotchy appearance. Potassium deficiency on squash. Remember, what did potassium, what does potassium do for the plant cell? It increases its what? Remember, its cell wall thickness. So notice the plants are beginning to leaf tissue on the outer branch where the new growth is. It doesn't have enough potassium to make a thick cell wall, so the cell wall is thinner. So therefore it's more susceptible to what? Drying out and disease and dying. So that's a potassium deficiency. Yes, ma'am?
Can you put ironite on plants that have yellow leaves?
You can, yes. Can you put ironite on plants with yellow leaves? You can, yes, and that should help. If it doesn't help, then you probably have a pH problem. You want to check the pH.
Could it be too much water?
It can be, because you leach the nitrogen past the root zone. It can be too much water. It could be several things. This is potassium deficiency on bell peppers. Again, notice it's the outer margin or outer rim of the leaf. That's bad. As your leaves shrink up and die, that exposes the fruit, and then your fruit can sun scald. So it's not a good thing. It's magnesium deficiency. Fairly similar to zinc. It's got a green rib with green going out the side of it. Chloride toxicity. This is key. We see a lot of this, especially in August, September. People will use potassium chloride-based fertilizers on their plants, on their yard. Toward the summer, that chloride ion builds up at the end of the summer, and the plants start having this look to them. The tip begins to turn yellow, and as that yellow works its way up the leaf, the tip turns brown. That's chloride ion toxicity. And again, using fertilizers that are high in potassium chloride is a major cause of this.
The house plant does that. Could that be the water?
It can be. Can be. Well, we'll talk about water issues in the next one. This is blossom end rot. Some people call, I got a fungus on my tomatoes. What does it look like? Well, the end of the fruit's brown. That's not a fungus, that's a nutrient deficiency. It's calcium deficiency. And the way to prevent that is to put some gypsum when you plant your plants. That should keep you for the whole season. This iron deficiency on roses, again, overall yellow look. This is one I've added for this last session. We see this a lot. Leaf is green, nice and healthy, but the outside edge is yellow and black spots. That's a boron toxicity. Remember we taught the list of micronutrients: nickel, iron, manganese, boron. Too much boron can be toxic. That's a sign of too much boron. And I see that several times a year in the store. People bring in a leaf, it looks exactly like that. Yes, ma'am.
How would you have an excess amount of boron in the soil?
How do you have an excess amount of boron in the soil? It just occurs naturally. One of the reasons we grow a lot of almonds around here is almonds can tolerate high amounts of boron.
I've got a red bud that looks something like that when it's out in the leaf.
It can be. And when we first moved to Bakersfield, we bought the 10 acres. Well, let's plant some trees on it. We actually had a guy from the University of California Cooperative Extension come out, had a big soil probe, and hammered it in the ground and came up. We got a lot of silt, and we had to analyze. We do have high levels of boron. We thought about putting in cherry trees. He said, don't do it.
So how do you fix that?
Good. How do you fix that? You have to adequate water and drainage. You have to leach it past the root zone. And that's, again, talking about your drainage, your end plugs. Some people in the western part of the valley here, they'll actually go down 4 feet and put in drains. And those drains will run off into a big thing. And as they water, that water dissolves the nutrients, takes it out, and it actually drains out. And then they have to keep, oftentimes they'll put sulfur into their irrigation material just to keep the alkaline down, keep build up. So it has something you manage. But it's a boron toxicity. This is another one. This is a redwood. Ever see redwoods that look like that? Boron toxicity is a possibility. I would generally suggest soil pH, check your watering, make sure you get enough water down to the roots, do the deep root feeding, check your pH before I would think of a boron toxicity. But that is something to consider when your redwoods turn like that. It is a possibility. Yes, ma'am.
There are a lot of redwoods in town, primarily on the west side, that are beginning to die or are
Right.
dead. What's their problem?
You have to investigate. Let me go back to this book here, Abiotic Diseases. There's several things that can look the same. Lack of water in a redwood can look like that. An acid soil or an alkaline soil in a redwood could look like that. So you have to do your investigating. But it just leaves another option out there that it is an option if you have plant problems. It can be what they call specific ion toxicities, chloride and boron.
Well, I see a lot of dead redwoods along the roads.
Probably that is they lack water. They stop maintaining them. If you notice how high they're pruned up, redwood trees should leave their lower canopy existing. Because that covers their root zone, keeps their roots cool, especially during the summer. You prune a redwood up like that, it's going to die. The big article in the paper the other day, a month ago or something, that's been some 2,000, 20,000, they could have called me up. I would have done it. I could have told them exactly what it is and charged them half that much. But, the sun will burn the trunk of the tree. The roots get hot. There's not enough water. You plant a tree that grows out here, and you put in a little 3-foot, parking meter. It's not designed to be that way. You need to put something in that's designed to grow like that. But who am I? Any other questions?
Well, what about
Yes, sir.
if you have a lot of ground cover underneath that?
Well, you should have. Okay, the question is, what about a bunch of ground cover under that? I'll back up a little bit. It all depends on how the tree was planted originally. The tree will adapt to whatever is around it. If you have ground cover in there, that ground cover can help cover your root zone. The thing you want to do with the redwoods is to keep the roots cool, especially during the summer. If there's competition with roots, in other words, with the tree and the plants, the tree is the big boy. He's going to take the water from the plants. Last year I had some slides to start this instead of my garden. I had some plants from the International Flight Training Academy where the ground cover was sparse, much of trees in their little planter area, and the trees were hogging all the water. So as those things adapt, if you can maintain the amount of water that each need, it's going to be okay because it started out that way. There's somebody bought a house down on 24th Oleander somewhere in that area. It had a huge old oak tree in the backyard, beautiful oak tree. They went in and they planted flowers underneath it. The tree started to die. Why? Well, because the tree had adapted to that area. Now you're going to put a new thing in there that's upset that tree's system, what it had to. So that's why if they coexist, they should coexist from the beginning, and then you still may have interference later on. But generally with the redwoods, you want to keep that lower branches. You want to keep the root moist. You want to keep them cool. You want the moisture to be able to go underneath that into the tree itself. Yes, sir?
What if you take away something that was like remove a plant that was coexisting with the tree?
What if you take away a plant? Again, the tree's the big boy, so it should be able to survive and help with it adapt to that. But again, trees, what you do today may not show up for 6 months or next year. So it's something hard to figure out, a little bit at a time. But generally, they're the big boys. They'll take what they need. Yes, sir.
One more question on
Yeah.
redwoods. I planted some about 4 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I ran some poles up by the fence and put some rainbirds on them.
Okay.
And I have a couple of rainbirds that come on, especially when it's real hot in the summer, a couple of times during the day for maybe 5 minutes, 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of try and keep the humidity in there.
Okay.
I'm still getting that.
Okay. Okay. Question is, I plant some redwoods, but have some rainbirds, some misters. That's kind of a good idea. You think of where the redwoods exist on the coast. There's foggy days that kind of it drips down there. It's kind of a good thing. We have our lawn plant out front of the house and in the store. In those hot days, I'll kick the sprinklers on when I leave at night just to cool the canopy down. It's a good thing. So you have to look at some other problem. You may have a fungus disease. You may have lack of water underneath. The canopy's fine, but you're still not getting the water to the roots up like that. Fungus disease, pH problems. So you've done a good thing, but there's probably something else that's causing the rest of that. Any other questions? Okay, let's take a 15-minute break, a little longer, and we'll deal with the second half. We dealt this first half with abiotic problems, not related to living things. Now let's